What's going on, everybody? Emceemur here, and welcome back to the Emceemur Show, and it is time once again for another fantabulous unboxing and review. That's right. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Legends Flashback Console from AtGames. Now, we've looked at a lot of AtGames stuff recently, but that's mostly been Atari stuff, which is mostly what I'm interested in. At least in that format. The ease of streaming, the accessibility of those games with an HDMI hookup. It's convenient. It's neat. Now, these are newer games here, obviously. These are games that in most cases, I've got physical copies of. I don't really need this. But looking at the set list here, this might be a pretty cool show. There are some games here I would like access to in this format. I want to get this thing out. I want to take a look at what it can do. You've probably heard mixed reviews about these. Don't know what you've heard, but either way, you haven't heard a review about this thing from the Emceemur Show, and that's what we're here to do today. Let's get this box open. Let's see what all's included, and more importantly, let's get it hooked up and see what it can do. Won't you join me? So here it is, the Legends Flashback Console from AtGames, 50 built-in games. And I want you to know there's some pretty cool stuff on this list, including but not limited to, holy crap, Phelios. That's kind of a rare one in this day and age, and that's one that I really dug from back in the day. There's some cool stuff on here, man. Forgotten Worlds. I'd like to see what Ghouls and Ghosts looks like on here. Come on. Let's get this thing open and see what's inside. Ooh. So to start with, we have our instruction manual, although I'm pretty sure we know what to do with this thing. And then we've got the console. It's a little bitty thing. It's pretty much what I expected. It's about the same size as the Genesis one they did. This is where it gets interesting. Yes, we've got the power supply and the HDMI holes, but we got that SD card slot. So you better believe that we're going to do some customization to this thing in a future video. So the controllers obviously are going for the Sega Genesis 6-button look. The D-pad feels kind of up and off the thing, similar to how it did on the Blast Units controllers, which is okay. There's just a little bit more play in there maybe than normal. The real test will be in the gameplay, the responsiveness and how it works with games that we're familiar with, and we'll be able to tell if there's any difference at all. Buttons feel good. Hopefully these will do just fine. There's 2 of them, so we should be ready to rock and roll with that. Other than that, all that we have here, it looks like, is a power supply. Pretty basic stuff. I'm not seeing an HDMI cable. Luckily, we've got enough of those here to wrap around the world 3 times. So we'll get this thing hooked up, but it's important to note that there's not one in here, and that you want to make sure you have one at the ready. Let's get her plugged in, and let's see what this thing's all about. So getting right into this thing, we see a decent looking interface and the familiar riff in the background that we've heard on some of the other flashback consoles we've looked at. I went straight into a game I would be familiar with, of course, some Street Fighter, something the controls would be really familiar, to test the controllers out. But it was a weird setup. The start button doesn't work initially. You got to go into the menu from the button on the console and insert the coins. Then you can press start. I guess they were going for some kind of arcade feel with it. But I got to tell you, at first I thought my controllers didn't work because the start button wouldn't do anything. And that was just weird. I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't really a fan of that. That didn't really add anything to the experience. But, getting into the game, it's Street Fighter, man. It looked right, it sounded right, and it pretty much felt right, although I am going to say that using the controllers that came with this did not feel as good as using the original Genesis controller, and you can assume they probably wouldn't anyway, but I gotta say, when pressing to the right, it just seemed like there was some delay or just overall lack of responsiveness in what I was really hoping to get out of it. So if you have a 6-button Sega controller, you probably want to use it. But all in all, the game played well. Next thing we did was move into some Ghouls and Ghosts, and you know, it's about this time I'm really realizing that these are arcade modes. These are arcade ROMs of these games. I was thinking they would be Genesis versions. And actually, that is pretty cool. I mean, I'm glad to see that, because these are versions I didn't already have access to. The only thing that I would say here is I kind of hear some crackling in the background music. I don't know if that was always there. I don't really have anything to compare it to other than a different version, which, you know, that's a variable. I have heard some people talk about the sound on these units, so that's something I'm really listening for here and being critical of. Nothing that's a serious issue, really. I mean, I will say that when the music stops, the sound stops, so it's probably part of the background music. All the sound effects and everything else sound right. And the game looks good and the game handles well. This is a version, again, that I don't have. It's of a game that I very much love. I think this is something I'm going to be happy to have, and I'm definitely going to want to play all the way through. So busting right into some Phelios, and you know, oh my god. This game is amazing. If you have not played this game, do yourself a favor and find a way to play it. And this console is a way to play it. This game is so freaking nasty. I mean, one of my favorite Genesis games, and definitely one of my favorite shmups of all time. But how did they know? I mean, this is such a weird game to include in any kind of collection. It's such a wild card, but it's a fantastic addition. I'm so glad to see that it's here. This game is so much fun and so unique for the genre that it is. It's just really stinking cool. And, you know, playing this, no issues. Sound is right. It looks right. It controls right. You know, this is fantastic. I was so stoked to see that this was part of the lineup on this console. So this is definitely something really cool. Something good this console's got going for it. So, you know, the majority of the games on this thing are arcade ROMs, and the more I think about it, the cooler that is, the more unique that is, because these are versions of the games that we are definitely not as familiar with, you know, versus the home versions of some of these that we spent a lot of time on. I decided to get on some Mega Man 2, obviously a console game that we're all extremely familiar with, just to check it out, to see how it holds up, and you know, it felt right, it looked right, and most importantly, it sounded right. So this was fantastic. Again, you know, I'm not seeing much not to like here, but I'm seeing a lot of stuff that's extremely intriguing on this console so far. And I see a lot more I'm very anxious to dig into. This is pretty cool so far, man. And then it just keeps on getting wackier, and you know, this may have had something to do with licensing, I don't know, but they've got the Famicom version of Tetris going on here, which I have never played before, and it handled strangely. I gotta say that it is definitely not superior to the NES Tetris, but there again, it's something interesting. I've played NES Tetris until my eyes crossed and went back normal again. I have never seen this version before, and I've got a lot of different versions of Tetris, man. So again, this was just something unique. I mean, if I could sum this whole console up in one word, I guess it would be unique. Never seen this before. Now I'm seeing it. It's a new experience. I now have access to this, and it's pretty cool when you think about it that way. Popping into the menus, you have the option of turning on the scanline filter, as we've seen on previous flashback consoles. You're going to put the lines on the screen, you're going to get that old school 2B TV look there for the arcade experience, and that's always neat to have. It's something cool to look at, just something to enhance it, something to mess around with for funsies. And you know, as with other flashback consoles, you still have the rewind function, and you have save states where applicable, so that's nice to have where you may possibly need that. And you know, there's so much more to explore with this thing. And you know, I've seen this thing on sale for as low as $40, and there's definitely $40 worth of fun to be had here if you ask me. I mean, I feel like I've already got my money's worth just looking at what I've seen, but there's so much more to explore, and we're going to be looking at all of that and more right here on the show. I can't wait to do it. So there you have it, the Legends Flashback Console from AtGames. And I gotta tell you, this thing is interesting on a number of levels, more so than I even gave it credit for being, because we're talking about arcade ROM versions of some of the games on here that, honestly, I didn't know that's what this was. I didn't know that's what I was getting. And that's kind of neat in the sense that I didn't have access to these versions. Most of these games, like Forgotten Worlds and Ghouls and Ghosts, these were games I played till my fingers bled, but I played them at home on the Sega Genesis, not in the arcades. So in that sense, this is bringing something unique to the table. We have versions of these games that I didn't already have access to in this room, available to me now in the form of a convenient plug and play. So that's kind of neat in that sense. And you know, we're not done looking at this thing by a long shot. There's an SD card slot. Do with that what you will. And we also need to take a more in-depth look at the menus, all the games that are on here, and the gameplay, you know, in a future live stream. I would like to do that with y'all. I think we would have a great time with it. I think that's something that we're going to do. I want to know what you think about what you saw here today. I hope that you're going to leave a comment in the comment section below letting me know what you think about what you saw here today, because you know that I love getting a conversation going with you right here on the Emceemur Show. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you want to see out of this. You know, lots of great action to come in the not too distant future. I hope that you liked this video. I hope that you're going to drop a like on this video. And most importantly, if you have not already done so, I hope that you're going to subscribe to the Emceemur Show. Be a part of Mur Nation. We're rising up. All the fun things that we have going on right here on the show, you need to be a part of them. Make sure that you smack that notification bell so you are always the first to know when new content goes live. You know that I love making it for you. Emceemur signing off for this episode, and I will see each and every one of you again next time.